On your Monday episode of Locked On Raptors, more Jamal Shead, please.
You are Locked On Raptors, your daily Toronto Raptors podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, what's going on? And welcome to another episode of Locked On Raptors, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. It is Monday, October the 7th, and I'm your host, Sean Woodley. I've been covering the Toronto Raptors now for 11 seasons on various platforms. I've been the chairman of the Jamal Cabal for one day as well, and it's a pleasure to have you along here. You can find me over on the Hell website that sucks at Woodley Sean. You can find me or the show on Instagram at Locked On Raptors, and of course, you can join us in the Locked On Raptors Discord server. It was great to have the live game thread going again last night, talking about the Raptors taking on the Washington Wizards, as we are going to talk about today as we dig into the preseason game. Of course, a reminder, the Discord is free. Link in the description of the podcast. We'd love to see you in there. And of course, you can also support the show by following, subscribing, rating, reviewing on your audio app of choice and or on YouTube. Do both, please. It's very nice of you. Either way, thanks so much for being here. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. This season, you can start big with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And we will get started here talking about a 125-98 preseason thrashing of the very bad Washington Wizards in Montreal on Sunday night. Really good to see the fellas back out there playing hoop in Toronto Raptors garb. It was nice to see some new faces, some rookies, some returning guys looking a little sharper, a little more refined. We're going to get into all of it today. We'll start off talking Jamal Shead because, oh my God, Jamal Shead. I'm also going to run through 9 takes on 9 guys coming up in segment number 2. And then, of course, it's the return of the good, the bad, and the the way we round out every post-game episode of this here podcast. But let's start, as promised, with Jamal Shead, who I thought kind of stole the show in this one and was the guy who, to me, most popped off the screen, non-RJ Barrett division. We'll get to RJ coming up. He was incredible, to be expected, because he's always incredible these days, apparently. But Jamal Shead, as a rookie, 45th overall pick, coming in and looking as polished as he did against, albeit a really bad Wizards team, I thought was the clear, obvious big takeaway from this game. Jamal Shead looks ready for the NBA, and it's tough for any second rounder to have that said about them, for sure. But I do think with the outlier skill of his on-ball defense, which was on full display last night, with his playmaking, with just like the general tenacity he brings to the table, the maturity, the control, the refinement that comes from being a 4-year point guard at a very good college program, I am fully in on the Jamal Shead experience after last night. I could not be more bought in on this dude. He, like, from the very first possession in this game, popped off the screen. That possession for him, he locks up Bub Carrington a couple of times as Bub tries to get some space on him up high. He doesn't get anywhere, and so he passes it off to a big at the elbow. He runs off the screen, and Jamal Shead just like apparates through the screen, sticks with Bub all the way, grabs a steal on an attempted pass to Bub near the rim, and the Jamal Shead era begins, as I think most people expected it would, with a pretty incredible defensive play. The dude just kind of has this like aura about him, this winner's aura. He kind of has this thing. Look, we've got a lot of experience with point guards, small point guards who got the juice in these parts, having watched Kyle Lowry for all those years, to a lesser extent, Fred VanVleet as well. And look, you got to be wired a certain way to make it in the league as someone who is 6 feet tall, especially as the league moves further and further away from guys who are 6 feet tall. And I'm not saying Jamal Shead is going to go become Kyle Lowry, become a Hall of Famer or anything like that. This is one single preseason game against the Washington Wizards, which is the caveat that hangs over everything that's going to come out of my mouth on today's show. But he does seem to have that little sort of edge, that bite, that sort of little special something that little guys need to hang in the NBA. And that's huge. It's like he plays bigger than his size. The interior finishing was on point. He's got the glass kind of on lock, his bank shots from various angles and all that. Like, I'm super in, man. It's very fun. And it's not just the defense or the finishing around the rim, but the passing for him in this game was pretty impressive. He's just got like a real pop to the way he plays. He does everything with speed. He runs stuff super hard. Everything is done fast, but everything's also in control. And that's kind of what you want from a lead guard, right? We have not seen good backup point guard play in these parts for a while. I'm not saying Jamal Shead is going to go be a solid every single night, count on him, backup point guard from day one, but he's clearly got the tools for that to be a thing he can do in the league for quite a long time. Like it's just, again, second round picks, it's all a crapshoot. These things always are caveated, and it's very hard for second rounders to make it. But when a dude just got that little special something like Jamal Shead seems to, just as a guy who can survive despite his physical disadvantages in the NBA, I think you can feel pretty good about him carving out a role somewhere on this team, whether it's this season or in seasons to come. Frankly, though, like, why not just give him a shot out of the gate? Bruce Brown's not there. Jacoby Walter's hurt. There's guard need on this team. And he clearly is sort of very much entrenched in the identity this team's looking for on defense as well. Darko Rajakovic talked a lot yesterday about how happy he was with the point of attack defense from Shead and Davion Mitchell in particular. We'll talk about Mitchell coming up later too. And look, if your whole thing as a team is going to be, we're going to be nasty on the ball, we're going to have high pickup points, we're going to make ball handlers feel it, life is going to be hell for opposing lead guards, it stands to reason that the guy who might be the very best at making life hell for opposing lead guards gets a shot pretty early in his rookie season. And I think there's a case here already for Jamal Shead to be part of the rotation plans going into the year, just because of the positional need and because he's clearly got the sort of speed of the NBA down pat. Not all the rookies did. We'll get into that coming up later too, but I thought Jamal Shead was just bloody impressive in this one. Again, the passing, the connection with Kelly Olynyk, I thought was pretty nice. He had that pick and pop three with him at one point. Had a nice little entry pass to Kelly off a nice little design set too, as Kelly got a nice deep seal in the second half and scored there. Again, the passing, the pocket passing in the pick and roll, the entry passes, the spraying out to shooters, the vision, it's all there for Jamal Shead. And again, he gets downhill so quickly. He's really fast. He's got the jets on that first step. There's a lot to like here. Obviously, like the shooting is going to have to come along. And that is going to be the limiting factor to Jamal Shead this season and in the future for sure. He does so many other things really well. Can he become a passable three-point shooter? Can he have any kind of pull-up juice whatsoever? Wasn't there last night. I think he was 0 for 2 on his threes, 0 for 1 on pull-ups. And look, it's going to take some time to iron that out. It's just not something he ever really succeeded with in college, low 30s type guy. If he can be like a league average three-point shooter, though, with all the other stuff he does as a defender, as a passer, as just like a guy who does stuff that helps teams win basketball games, I think there is a long-term role for Jamal Shead within this team, which is very exciting. And look, again, it's one preseason game. Maybe it's ridiculous to be spouting off these grand proclamations after one preseason game against a sort of NBA-adjacent basketball team in the Washington Wizards, but this was a thing Shead did in Summer League. This is a thing he was branded as coming out of college. I think he's just kind of checking all the boxes that we thought he would check anyway. And look, there's some stuff I really loved in his post game as well. He got the podium after the game. I thought the stuff he talked about with, on offense, feeling a little more free than he has in practice because being guarded by Davion Mitchell is hell, and not having to be guarded by Davion Mitchell once you get into games, there's this like taking off the bumpers sort of thing, or adding the bumpers to bowling thing. I don't know what the analogy I'm going for is. It makes it easier. It's like dropping the difficulty on the video game. And that's a pretty interesting thing. You talked about Emmanuel quickly and guarding him and the challenge that was guarding him early in camp and then kind of figuring it out and then quickly having to adjust. I think the idea of having all these maniac on-ball defenders in Mitchell, in Shead, and DJ Carton, who we'll talk about as well, it can only be a good thing for just sort of bringing up the general level of everybody. And I thought Jamal was pretty eloquent in talking about the sort of contagiousness of being a nasty on-ball defender and how everyone kind of buys into it once you see some people doing it. And again, if Jamal Shead is this essential to this identity the Raptors are trying to forge, I totally see there being a role for him on this team right away. It sucks that, for the 905, if he's going to just sort of carve out an NBA job and skip that step entirely. Plenty of time, obviously. We'll see how it all shakes out. But Based on what we saw in that opener, if we see more of that from Jamal Shead, pencil him in for a rotation job, pencil him in for 10 to 15 minutes a night. What do you have to lose? You're not a very good team. You're not expecting to be a very good team. And this is a season about development and finding out who you got and what you got. Give all of the runway to Jamal Shead. And I, as the chairman of the Jamal Cabal, will be very, very happy with that. We're going to come back on the other side. I'm going to put 9 minutes on the clock, and we're going to run through 9 guys who played in this game for the Raptors and my quick takeaways on what they did. We'll come back with that in just 1 second. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. Halloween lets us have fun with what scares us, but what about those fears that don't involve zombies and ghosts? Therapy is a great tool for facing your fears and finding ways to overcome them, because sometimes the scariest thing is not facing our fears in the first place and holding ourselves back. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire, get matched with a licensed therapist, and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. I know a lot of people who have very much benefited from therapy in my life, people who I love. And if you are maybe looking to talk to somebody about what you got going on, BetterHelp can be the solution for you. Overcome your fears with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Back at it here, running through the Toronto Raptors 125-98 win over a really bad Washington Wizards team in Montreal. Very cool, very fun environment it seemed down there, full stadium. Montreal seemed to be a pretty awesome host for this, as they should be. Expand to Montreal, please. I think it would be a really cool NBA city. I'm just saying. Adam Silver, listen to the pod. Anyway, let's get into some quick takeaways from all the guys who played in the game for the Raptors last night. I'm going to put 9 minutes on the clock, hopefully go a minute per guy. I might run over on a couple, and I'll go under on a couple as well. But 9 minutes, 9 guys. Let's get to it. Guy number 1, RJ Barrett. Boy, oh boy, RJ Barrett looked awesome. 17, 2-2, 7 of 10, 3 of 4 from downtown. Exactly what we saw last year from him in terms of the in-rhythm stuff, the transition stuff, the threes that he hit. All 3 were wide open catch and shoots, very much in rhythm in the flow of the offense. You love to see it. His one miss, unsurprisingly, a pull-up step back. I thought what really popped for me in this one, though, with RJ, and this is not something he's probably going to be asked to do a ton this year, just when Quickly and Scotty are healthy, but there's a lot more in terms of RJ successfully creating from a standstill and pick and roll as well. Him and Jakob Poeltl in particular linking up a couple times. And look, if you give RJ a screen hard enough to send him around the corner and get him downhill, he's going to get to the rim and he's probably going to score. And, you know, whether it's that pick and roll situation or what we saw mostly last year for RJ, which was flying off a curl, catching at the nail and getting downhill from there. I think, the importance of the slingshot effect of Jakob Poeltl screens on RJ Barrett's driving game, pretty obvious. And, you know, there were a couple missed reads and stuff like that. And, you know, tough stuff for him in the pick and roll as well. It wasn't all perfect, but for the most part, RJ Barrett, awesome, incredible. Hopefully he's okay. He took that shoulder contusion, missed the second half of this game, obviously. I'm fine if we don't see him again in the preseason. Put him on ice, literally, and he seems ready to go for the season. I would not mess around, and hopefully we get some word today. I think they're going to do some more evaluation of what happened to his shoulder. Hopefully it's nothing serious. Obviously, shoulder stuff can be scary. You can miss a lot of time if the wrong thing happens to your shoulder. Hopefully it was just like a stinger, contusion, bruise. That's what a contusion is. So hopefully it's not anything structural or anything like that. We'll keep an eye on there. But RJ Barrett, pretty awesome. Don't need to see any more from him in the preseason. I cannot wait. That is the version of RJ Barrett that sticks around on the Raptors as a long-term core piece if he can do it again. There was also a defensive possession where he totally locked up Kyle Kuzma's ass. That was super fun as well. I went way too long on RJ Barrett. So let's go to the next guy. Jonathan Mogbo, guy number 2. Looked like a rookie out there. A little overeager. Didn't love his defensive footwork. Got out of position a couple times and picked up fouls as a result. I thought he looked a lot better in the second half when he played most of his minutes with Kelly Olynyk as the other big in the front court and not with Jakob Poeltl, who he started alongside. Him and Jakob Poeltl very much competing for the same space, seeping into space on the baseline, looking for dump-offs and stuff like that. There was one possession where RJ Barrett drove and both Yock and Mogbo tried to go to the same spot for a laydown. And like there was just no space. There were three guys draped all over RJ, and you could see RJ after the possession talking to Mogbo, like, hey, space out, man, space out, kind of cleared out a little bit. I thought Mogbo playing with Olynyk, not surprisingly, more of a shooting and spacing guy, had a lot more sort of comfort on the floor, knew where to stand more in the second half than he seemed to know where to stand in the first half. Something to keep an eye on, but I continue to think Mogbo Olynyk is going to be the best front court iteration to take advantage of what Mogbo does well. 5 assists, 5 boards, had that alley-oop dunk from Gradey Dick as well. I liked what I saw in the second half in particular from Mogbo, but there's some rookie stuff to figure out there. Missed some switches on defense, probably missed more defensive assignments than anyone else on this team in the game. But that's rookie stuff. We'll see. But I think there was a lot of stuff to really like from Jonathan Mogbo as well. Guy number 3, Gradey Dick. He can go 0 for 25 from 3 in the preseason, and I do not care if he's scoring with the vast array of just sort of moves and like in different situations that we saw from Gradey in this one. The pull-up mid-range obviously is there when he runs in off the line. The floater, the running scoop off glass finish, the finish through traffic, 5 for 5 on 2s in this game for Gradey Dick. I have no doubt the three-point shot's going to come along, just as it did last year. I think the stroke is there. Guys get streaky. This is what being a shooter is. But the nice thing about Gradey Dick is he does a lot more than just shoot. I thought he even had a couple nice defensive stands in this one. Still got blown by a couple times as well. I think Bilal Coulibaly cooked him on one possession, but overall, really like what you see from Gradey. I think he has to start. It seems pretty obvious to me. That dynamism in the starting 5 is a thing that can really blow the roof off of the offense for that group. The defense, we'll see, but I think the offense is a real shot if Gradey Dick is flying around and doing the Gradey Dick things he was last night and, knocking in a couple more threes as well. Guy number 4, Kelly Olynyk. The reports of him being cooked after a rough summer with Canada, seemingly overstated and premature. I thought he looked like the exact kind of connective role piece this team needs in those second units. I think he's going to make it so a lot of the more sort of defensive-oriented guys on this team can get on the floor and have it make sense geometrically, whether it's Davion Mitchell, whether it's Jamal Shead, whether it's Jonathan Mogbo. I think he's also going to be there to help fill in the three-point volume gap, and he took 5 threes in this one. You'd love to see that. I really liked what I saw from Kelly in this game. He looked exactly like what you want to see with his 10, 5, and 3 off the bench in 12 minutes. Really, really good stuff from Kelly. Very encouraging after a rough summer with Canada. Guy number 5, Davion Mitchell. On-ball stuff, clearly extremely disruptive. Really fun to watch a guy who can navigate screens the way he can and recover when he gets caught on a screen the way he can. I thought his passing out of the pick and roll was really tidy. My big concern with him as a backup point guard, if that's what the Raptors wanted to be, he started this game as a point guard. My concern has been his pick and roll craft and creation. He created for others pretty well. He had a couple nice pocket passes here and there, spraying out to shooters. He didn't quite get his own offense going in pick and roll. And that's because he has a hard time getting into the paint in those pick and roll situations. Guys are going under the screen on him. He's just kind of seeing a wall of defenders. He's not quite able to sort of break that level of defense and get into the teeth of it. But if he's going to be able to make nice pocket passes and keep things flowing, there's something there. And, I thought he did some really good work in transition as well. I think getting into the teeth of the defense on transition is a lot easier for him because he's fast. He can just kind of go head down and get all the way, whether he scores or kicks out to someone. Impressive stuff overall, I thought, from Davion Mitchell in this game. Certainly a guy who's going to be an essential role player on this team. He's going to get a lot of rotation minutes. Guy number 6, Ochai Agbaji. My expectations were on the floor for Ochai coming into this one after a really rough summer league for him. And I thought he played pretty well, in particular in the third quarter. I thought that was his best stretch. Still have a hard time believing in what he can really contribute to a winning basketball team if the threes aren't going to fall. He went 1 of 3 in this game. He does have that interesting sort of pump and drive game. And if he can actually get defense to care about him as a shooter, maybe that unlocks something. I thought he made a couple nice connective passes and stuff in this game too. But jury's still out. I'm still not totally sold on Ochai being like a regular part of the plans this year, but he, by all accounts, performed well in camp, had a really good scrimmage on Friday at McGill. I'm open to Ochai Agbaji surprising me. Again, expectations were quite low, and I thought he exceeded them by quite a bit in this game. So good for him. Guy number 7, Bruno Fernando. Don't think he went out and earned himself a guarantee on his contract or anything like that. But I thought there was some interesting stuff there from him. I thought 7 rebounds in a pretty limited stretch speaks to a thing he's going to bring to this team. He's going to clean the glass offensively and defensively. I think we saw a couple nice flashes of him passing from the elbows. Clearly, this is what the Raptors want their bigs to do. Every big who played in this game did some stuff from the elbows, whether it was Mogbo, whether it was Chomche, whether it was Bruno Fernando. We know Olynyk and Pirtle operate from there a ton. Very clearly, that's the directive for the bigs in this offense. And I thought Fernando did a couple nice passes here and there, some nice touch. He had a nice outlet pass at one point. Again, I still think, considering the other options in the front court, he should make the last roster spot on this team. But I think, we'll need to see a little bit more. This wasn't like an incredible game from him, but also not a bad one either. Guy number 8, DJ Carton, kind of the forgotten man in the group of pesky point of attack guards on this roster with Shead and Mitchell, of course. But after a pretty strong summer league, I thought he looked pretty composed and pretty engaged as a point of attack guy himself in this game. Shooting, I think, like with Shead and Mitchell, is going to be the thing that keeps him from the NBA or makes him an NBA player. Not sure he's going to have a huge shot at minutes with this team behind Shead and Mitchell and Bruce Brown and Jacoby Walter once those guys come back. But certainly an interesting guy to have around as a two-way. I don't think there's any reason to not have him on the two-way. He'll be great for the 905. And, he seems to be a guy who they like quite a bit. So shout out DJ Carton. I thought he was pretty good in this one. And then guy number 9, Ulrich Chomche, very limited run. Played just, 6 minutes, had 2 points, 2 boards, an assist. But man, oh man, consider me absolutely fascinated by Ulrich Chomche. This guy, it's going to take a while, but you don't often find dudes that big who are that mobile and in control of their limbs. It is pretty impressive stuff for an 18-year-old, and this is going to be a long-haul developmental project for sure. I'm not expecting really anything out of Chomche this year or even next year, but maybe he gets surprised. Maybe he makes some strides early that he can kind of, carve out 5-10 minutes once in a while here and there. But I think just the package, the defensive instincts, the rolling instincts, he had the putback dunk as well on a miss. There's something there with Chomche, man. Again, he's 18 years old. It's going to take a long time, but I am fully on board for the Ulrich Chomche experience. And that will do it for 9 minutes, 9 guys, 9 takes. We'll come back on the other side. I think I only went 1 minute long. Not so bad for me. We're going to come back and finish up, of course, with the good, the bad, and the way we round out every episode of this show that comes on the heels of a basketball game. We'll do that coming up in just 1 sec. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start this season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out latest stats, view the live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's pretty sweet. Of course, maybe you're not a football fan. I sure am not. I don't know what's going on. But if you are, you can go, and it's not just the NFL. You got college football. I gather there were some big upsets in college football over the weekend. Maybe that changes the picture for who's going to win the college football championship. You can put some money down on the futures bet there. You can also put futures on the NBA. Win over unders. Who's going to win the championship? Who wins the MVP? It's all there for you to go and peruse on FanDuel's easy-to-use website. Again, $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com, official sportsbook of the Locked On Podcast Network. Wrapping it up here with the good, the bad, and the everyone's favorite, extremely well-named segment, where after a Raptors game, we talk about a thing I liked, a thing I didn't like, and a thing that's got me a wee bit intrigued from the most recent Toronto Raptors basketball game. It's nice to have this segment back in our lives. All right, let's go to the good. Shout out Chris Boucher. They noted last night on the broadcast. I feel like this is common knowledge, but if you didn't know, Chris Boucher is the longest serving Toronto Raptor. He's going into his 7th year with the Toronto Raptors, which breaks my brain. It's kind of crazy, but that's where we are. And I think there's still a job for him somewhere on this team. He's in the last year of his contract. We know that it's not going to be some sort of long-term thing with him and the Raptors. This is probably going to be his last year in Toronto. But even if he's just a 10th, 11th man who can figure into some lineups, I think there's a chance he can really fit with Kelly Olynyk. We saw it last year for a little brief stretch before Chris Boucher got hurt. and miss the rest of the year. He does a lot of the stuff you need in a lineup that also features Kelly Olynyk. He's a really good offensive rebounder. He's a nice shot blocker, all that stuff. I think there's a role there for Chris Boucher on this team if Darko Rajakovic wants to use him. And it seems like they're on a good, on the same page. Chris Boucher talked a lot in his post game about the relationship with Darko and the sort of understanding of the role and what's needed from him and all of that. And look, it's nice to have a vet like that around the team. Everyone seems to like Chris Boucher. He seems to be a positive presence in the room. And it was very cool to see him kind of be, the host guy in Montreal over the week for the team as well. I'm rooting for Chris Boucher. Again, don't think it's going to be a long-term thing, even if it's just a matter of they play him to build some value and he gets traded by the deadline. I think there is a role for Chris Boucher on this team, and you could do a lot worse in your 10th, 11th, 12th man than the longest-serving Raptor, who's got a lot of interesting things to offer on a team that kind of needs the things he brings to the table. Let's get to the bad, shall we? The bad is the Washington Wizards. I don't really have anything bad to say about what we saw from the Raptors. It's one preseason game. I'm not going to get too bent out of shape about anything I didn't like. But the Washington Wizards, man, first of all, they're going to make the first couple preseason games hard to fully evaluate because they're not really a basketball team. They are, I guess, on paper, and, they play basketball. But man, oh man, it's a rough scene over there. And it's going to, it'll be weird when the Raptors, or maybe more telling when the Raptors play like a real team in the preseason or, get to the actual NBA games. Once the season starts, the Wizards not exactly the greatest test. And again, everything that happened against the Wizards, there's a caveat hanging over all of it. But yeah, this is not a very good basketball team. And look, I have bad news for anyone hoping the Raptors are going to contend with the Wizards to be the worst team in the NBA this year, or be one of the worst teams and be in that Cooper Flag high end of the sweepstakes. The whole 14% chance you get to draft a guy if you're one of the 5 worst teams. Not exactly what I'd be tanking for. Is it one of the 4 worst teams? Whatever. But either way, the very best outcome is 14%. I don't think the Raptors are getting to that one because the Wizards surely will. They stink. The Nets also really stink. I think we're going to see a lot of teams that really stink. I think the Bulls are going to be a disaster. I think the Jazz and the Blazers are going to be really awful. This is the level of bad that you need the Raptors to be if you're a tank head. And I just don't think the Raptors are going to be that level of bad. I don't think they're going to be great by any means. I think it's probable that they are not even a play-in team. The Hornets, I think, if they really click in and LaMelo Ball stays healthy, may have the slight edge for that last play-in spot. But if they don't, the Raptors might just get it by default. And I know people will be mad at that, but I just the bottom of the East is really bad. It's going to be really hard to be as bad as the Wizards and the Nets of the world. And you shouldn't want that. The Raptors are starting from a point where they have way more already in the coffers than what the Wizards or the Nets do talent-wise. And I think they're probably just going to be a pretty bad team anyway, finish between the 7th and 11th worst record in the league. If they lose the play-in, I bet they'll probably, it'll be a situation where the teams out west are better. And so while they might be, 10th in the East, if they lose the play-in, they'll still probably be a top 10 pick team just because of their record. And I think that's fine. I don't think there's a need to go and try to be as bad as these gigantic loser franchises because they are gigantic loser franchises. And it's just, if injuries happen and it happens that way, sure, that's one thing. But if your guys are healthy, I don't think you can go and try to be as bad as these teams because it's going to be really hard to be as bad as the Wizards. They stink, and we'll see it again in the next preseason game on Friday as well. That was the bad. We already got to that. One note on that actually as well. It's a good within the bad. The contempt that Jack Armstrong has for Jordan Poole's whole deal, beautiful stuff. I believe the line he dropped in there after Jordan Poole took a really ill-advised early clock 3 was, that's just part of his game. He takes bad shots. Fantastic stuff. We love it from Jack Armstrong, the best broadcaster in the land. Let's get to the shall we? And it's the battle for the final roster spot. No, I'm sorry. Jamison Battle. He was good. And maybe there's a case for him to get a look. I don't know. Look, he's an undrafted rookie who is 23 years old. There's only so much upside a guy like that's going to have, but he looked really good in summer league. And of course got the deal with the Raptors because of it and carried it over to this one. And the thing that pops with him is just he's got a beautiful 3-point shot, just a beautiful release, really quick release. It's very quiet. It's very minimal in terms of the movement. And look, he shot 43% at Ohio State last year. It was an outlier in his college career, but he shot 43% while also shooting 93% at the line. That's really impressive. He's 6'7". We'll see about the defensive acumen. Very much TBD. I'm not sure he's got crazy high upside there, but I'm curious if he challenges to take one of the two-way spots, probably from Brandon Carlson at some point this year, whether it's before the end of camp or during the season. This team, I think, needs 6'7" shooting more than they need a sort of tweener big and Brandon Carlson, where he's 25 years old. I know he can shoot as well in theory, but I think he's probably more one-dimensional. And again, just at a position where, yes, the Raptors need bigs, but I'm not sure Brandon Carlson is the type of big they really need. And so I wonder if there's a chance that Jamison Battle steals that two-way job from Carlson at some point. Either way, I think Battle's a guy to keep an eye on, for a later season conversion or a later season 10 day or something like that, if all breaks right. The shooting's real, man, and shooting's very nice. So shout out to Jamison Battle. As far as the last roster spot goes, like as it stands right now, I still think I'd lean towards Bruno Fernando. I don't think I'd give that job to Battle. I think they need a guy like Fernando, just the defense and rebounding he brings to the table. But certainly, it's remains to be seen. There's still lots of time here, and there is no guarantee on Bruno Fernando's deal. And so that leaves that last roster spot very much up for grabs, I think, for anyone to go in and take it. We shall see. Either way, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for hanging out. And it's nice to be back talking about basketball games. It's been damn long since we talked about a basketball game, and damn longer since we talked about a basketball game for the Raptors that mattered. And so, we're still a couple weeks away from those games happening again. The preseason is the preseason, but it was nice to see some dudes get some run. And man, oh man, Jamal Shead, I am stoked. We'll leave it there. Thank you so much. Please follow, subscribe, rate, review, tell a friend. Much appreciated when you support the show. However it is you choose to support the show. You can also join us in the Discord. Link in the description of the podcast. Free to join as always, and it's a great listener community we got building around the show. We'd love to see you in there. We'll see you on Tuesdays. Vivek Jacob will be along as the week continues. We got some fun stuff later this week. Doug Branson from Locked On Hornets is going to join me. We're going to do a little crossover show to ask who's better, Raptors or Hornets. All that and more coming up this week. We'll talk to you Tuesday. Thanks so much for hanging. Bye-bye. Oh my God, 3 days in a row.